Welcome to the Get Over Yourself podcast. This is author and athlete Brad Kearns discovering ways to be healthy, fit, and happy in hectic, high-stress modern life. So let's slow down and take a deep breath, take a cold plunge, and expertly balance that competitive intensity with an appreciation of the journey. That's the theme of the show. Here we go. Let us give thanks to the show sponsors. These are great products and services. Check them out. It's so difficult to make the cut. AlmostHeaven.com for beautiful compact home use sauna kits. AncestralSupplements.com for grass-fed organ meats in a capsule. Easy. DNAFit.com. Genetic testing delivering comprehensive diet and exercise recommendations. WildIdea.com. Grass-fed, sustainable buffalo, beyond organic, and the Primal Blueprint online multimedia mastery courses. I'm your host. Learn more at the links on my homepage, bradkearns.com. I also have a new button called Shopping with Brad for other cool stuff at bradkearns.com. And here we go with the show.
For me, like the biggest downside I see of keto is like sort of the binary nature of it, whether you're, you know, that phrase, I'm kicked out of ketosis. And really for like any kind of diet, that's like the ultimate thinking you want to avoid, is that binary on the wagon, off the wagon sort of thing. Like anything, it's not the thing itself. Like CrossFit's great, but if you overdo it, it becomes not so great. Sort of the motto I came up with in the last few years is, you know, all life feeds on life, so make sure your life is worthy of taking it.
Here's a wild idea. How about eating some good, clean, delicious, sustainably raised meat instead of the nasty, trashy feedlot animals? The vast majority of our meat consumption. No wonder there's vegetarians and vegans out there. But look, Wild Idea Buffalo is 100% grass-fed and finished meat. They roam on the open range as they have been for 130,000 years. This wonderful company is doing the best they can to give these animals a good life, harvest them in a humane manner. Check this out. 40 million cattle are slaughtered every year and pushed into the mainstream food supply. You've read books like Fast Food Nation with the disastrous health impact and consequences of this mess. And then, by contrast, 60,000 buffalo a year are harvested. Much more nutritional value, much better feeling deep inside when you order quality meat. Go to wildidea.com, order direct. They'll ship it to your house. It's delicious. You'll be a convert right away. There's nothing in the world like Buffalo Burger. Fantastic. Try it. Hi, it's Brad to introduce my wonderful show with Brian McAndrew. Talk about pressure. Speaking of the guy who masters these audio recordings, the man behind the scenes, begrudgingly dragged in front of the microphone for a rare occasion where we sat down in Portland, Oregon, his home, and had an amazing discussion about all manner of peak performance, life experience. Brian has an incredible story. He's only 31 years old. He's been through all kinds of exciting things that we're going to get into in the show. Trips to Africa, getting seriously ill, not knowing what was wrong, trying to get fit, plunging into the hip, slick LA fitness scene and screwing that up royally in combination with a crappy job, doing some soul searching, going out into a wilderness survival retreat and getting way more than he bargained for. But generally, this guy he's my man. He is so committed to health and fitness and curiosity and exploration of everything that's going on. We have great discussions behind the scenes during our long days of filming content for the Primal Blueprint video courses, in our many adventures traveling around, hanging with Mark Sisson, filming and recording for this enterprise, the Get Over Yourself podcast, as well as the Primal podcasts. And it's a lot of fun to hang out with him. Very thoughtful guy, very focused and very committed to healthy living. And I think you're going to pick up that in the show and gain some great insights and inspiration. especially his simplified approach, his get over yourself approach. He's an understated guy. I told you I had to drag his ass to the microphone instead of having the headphones on, listening to other people blab. And we've had some great shows. He's on the Primal Blueprint podcast, I think a couple times, talking about keto. But this was a really special show because we got into kind of his life journey. It was framed around diet and exercise discussion, but some great insights come out of it. I'd say especially for younger listeners who are pondering their career direction, pursuing your hopes and dreams, doing crazy shit like making a YouTube video in your spare time at the University of Oregon that became an absolute sensation that captivated the whole community. They got into some legal imbroglios with the university and ended up settling and making all this money while they were still college students and blowing it all on incredible vacations. We're going to talk about that more in another show, Brian. My favorite topic, I love my ducks, is the video in question. And how did I find this guy? How did we connect? Get this, young listeners, if you want a career direction. Brian was a paid participant at our PrimalCon retreats. Young guy. There's a lot of people there. I tried to meet everyone and I remember him a little bit. And then I noticed that he had also paid his way through the Primal Health Coach course, graduated quickly, one of our first graduates, most enthusiastic participants, plunging deep into primal living, studying, getting his graduation badge, and then building his graduate profile page. And somehow I noticed that he was into video production as a career. I clicked on this or that link. I found the I Love My Ducks video, and it was absolute masterpiece of entertainment, cleverness, the rap song that they wrote and recited to the camera. No wonder millions of Oregon Duck football fans lived and swore by this video before every game. But anyway, right around the same time, we were, of course, based in Los Angeles, the Primal Enterprise, and trying to get more and more video content done and getting repeatedly disappointed and ripped off by crappy production crews. And I do mean crews where 3 people show up to film a simple recording and mess it up with poor editing skills, not knowing anything about primal living or the nuances. And so I reached out to him and I said, hey, dude, we need some help on the video side too. And he's like, well, I have a fantastic job doing commercials for Nike and that cool stuff in Portland. But we kept in touch. And he said, I'm looking for a career change. He marches to his own drummer. He's looking for cool ideas and opportunities and adventure. And that began our wonderful journey where the guy behind the camera is more ripped and more committed to primal paleo keto living than the subjects that he's filming, namely Mark and I. Sorry, Mark. We got to admit it. This guy's dialed in. And when we come down and film in Los Angeles, he's a welcome guest in my parents' home because he's from Coos Bay, Oregon, the sleepy coastal village that is the same hometown as my mother. So this guy fits in everywhere he goes, whatever he does, a cool dude if there ever was one. Go find him on Instagram at Whole Dudes, WHOLEDOODS with the distinctive logo. He's got 12,000 followers, even though he never says more than I'm eating this or little quips like that, but presenting a nonstop onslaught of these beautiful pictures of his fun but simple meals. And wait for the book coming soon for Whole Dudes. Brian McAndrew, enjoy the show. And I guess enjoy the show, Brian McAndrew. No mistakes. How about that? Easy work for you, bud. Brian McAndrew, both of us fussing with the recording devices for this show because you're the guy behind the scenes. And now we're here making another podcast.
Yeah, good to be here at your cousin's house.
Portland, Oregon, man.
Yeah.
Can't beat it. We just had a busy day of filming. My voice is tired, so that's why I'm going to tee you up and learn about your journey through keto because when the guy behind the camera is more devoted and even more ripped than the best-selling co-authors that he's filming, sometimes we've got to see what's going on here. So we saw you on KetoReset.com with your body transformation from fat chicken face. I forgot what your wife called you. I always mess that up.
I just got back from a wedding and people were bringing me the photos that I was using of the before photos at a friend's wedding. And people were putting in my face saying, hey, remember when you looked like this? I was like, oh my gosh, I can't, yeah.
Well, you kind of went from skinny dude to big guy in the gym getting huge. And then like kind of phase 3 now is this lean, mean keto machine. So especially, I'm curious, like at your age, would you just turn 31?
31.
Yeah. So in this age group, what's your peer group doing? Like your buddies from Duckland and the Subwitcha Girl group in Eugene, Oregon, are they into diet as a group? Would you make an observation, or how's things looking then?
Not really among my friends, but I definitely see sort of, I mean, I think the whole keto thing and even the carnivore thing, it seems like is sort of big in the whole like Silicon Valley, like tech, sort of younger people there. Sure.
The body hackers that are optimizing their brain function.
Yeah. And I think, and the thing with the carnivore diet, I think there's just the simplicity of it, the sort of that, I don't know, probably that very technical, like programmer mind is really drawn to of just, I just eat steak. And, you do get mental clarity from, being in ketosis. So I think it's those two things of sort of just the very the simplicity of it. And yeah, that sort of, I mean, I do notice a cognitive, boost from it still.
You mean in comparison to your previous ways where you were still eating healthy, but not in that deep keto? Yeah.
And I don't want to oversell it, but it is like, like a 10%, where I feel like, not just, like, I can solve math problems faster, but sort of more of just like a mood stabilizing sort of, there's less ups and downs where I feel like just kind of more chill throughout the day, less less anxious, I guess.
You don't want to oversell it because you were extremely brilliant prior to your keto foray. But another one, I don't know who said this, maybe it was Peter T or something, like the convenience factor and your level of productivity in your day when you wake up and make yourself a coffee or tea or whatever, and that's it, and you go to work.
Yeah.
I can think to some of my extravagant preparations, especially when I'm visiting my family in Woodland Hills, and like all I'm doing is cooking these awesome meals and making the dessert and the mascarpone mousse with fresh berries, which is pretty much keto friendly and primal friendly and nutritious and all that. But it's like the act of consuming these giant meals 3 times a day or even 2 times a day to where you go into a different realm, especially if you're busy. I mean, the main time when I'm really heavy into that keto thing is when I'm traveling, because I don't want to eat any crap.
Yeah, same. And when I know I'm going to be, really busy, if I know I'm going to have a lot of work stress, and it's like, that's when I'm sort of going to go like really keto, and I'm going to start, pounding the MCT oil, and it does become sort of less meals, and it's more, I'm just sort of just buzzing on, MCTs, and, I don't know. It's sort of like 2 different modes, I guess. I have my more like casual, vegetable rich keto, and then my sort of, I'm going to space, in my rocket ship traveling, and I'm just like dialed in with my can of sardines and MCT oil.
Makes it easy.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely is. I mean, I've taken breaks from keto, and is the biggest thing I notice is less, I definitely eat more meals. I'm more of like a 3 or 4 meal a day person when I'm eating, a more balanced diet, and then keto is more like 2.
Yeah. So in summary, here we are in 2018. I believe you and I started together in April of 2016 when we were doing that photo shoot and staging all these groups of trying to figure out what 50 grams of carbs looked like. And we're like, holy crap, some Brussels sprouts, a salad, 1 tablespoon of almond butter, and a few squares, and we're already there. I can't believe this. And then we tried to do some more research and get the, get the greens allocated a little differently, and a little bit of a free pass for having those greens. But that was now over 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And you've been kind of cruising nonstop pretty much.
Pretty much. And I think something that anyone can take away from is like, it hasn't been nonstop, it's more like it is 100%, like sort of when I'm just living my normal life, day to day during the week. But I mean, that's for me, like the biggest downside I see of keto is like sort of the binary nature of it, whether you're that phrase, I'm kicked out of ketosis. And really for like any kind of diet, that's like the ultimate thinking you want to avoid, is that binary on the wagon, off the wagon sort of thing. And sort of ketosis, or just like a keto diet has that sort of built into its framework, like, oh, I'm in ketosis, I'm out of ketosis. And so that's sort of the most troubling.
Sorry to hear that. It's terrible.
Yeah.
What happened?
I got kicked out.
I went to this wedding. I was in the wedding party. They made me drink wine and eat cake. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's is someone who wants to do a keto diet long term. I think it's, I just think you have to build into its framework of flexibility of there will be instances where I'm going to get knocked out, but it's not a big deal because, you just go back to eating your keto diet and you're back into it. And I experimented a little bit with, sort of a structured, like cyclical approach. And I honestly, I didn't like how much it made me focus on, I'm eating carbs now. Now I'm not eating carbs, and sort of the extra thought I had to put into it. Because the whole thing I liked about keto is that, it's less thinking about food. It's less, mental effort put towards my diet. But then doing the cyclical thing, it's suddenly you're fixating on it way more. And you realize that, one of my phrases I use is, life will give you refeeds. Like, you don't need to plan these carb refeeds, but if you have any sort of social life, you're going to have these instances where, it's probably not going to be, you're going to either have to avoid the situation or, be the one person who's not eating what's served. And I think in those instances, if it's like, one or, say every 1 or 2 weeks, like it's okay to eat not keto and not worry about it. And you don't have to make it into a big binge. And you can even, for me, like when I go to, like I just got back from a wedding this last weekend, and it's not like, oh, I'm going to have a carb refeed. It's like, I'm going to enjoy some beer. And, when the meal was served, I ate the steak and that's it. And then I had a bunch of beer and I was knocked out of ketosis. And, oh, well, in a couple of days, I'll be back into it.
Well, it's likely that this is a hormetic stressor with a net long-term benefit, that you're honing metabolic flexibility. Rob Wolf talked about that. Might have been on the lengthy Joe Rogan podcast where you get that metabolic insulin resistance, they call it. It's a controversial concept, but the main idea for the listener here is to say that if you're never producing that much insulin because you're in keto nonstop for years and years, that you have the same adverse effect as someone who's overproducing it. In other words, your cells don't respond well to insulin. So if you do go eat cake once in a while at a wedding or drink a bunch of beer, it's sort of like a recalibration where your cell receptors wake up and are more sensitive to insulin, which is the goal that we all want.
Yeah, and people will take that and they'll run a mile with it. And I think that's you don't want to do that, because all you have to just a simple sweet potato or a couple drinks or whatever, some popcorn is enough to do that. I don't know if there's any really great research about this, but I can imagine because ketosis is sort of like a starvation state. To sort of just let your body know that you're not in that state all the time probably has some sort of benefit, just sending that signal.
And also, everything's being rethought. Dr. Tommy Wood just told me, I think it was him, that now they're looking at 0.3 as the threshold for keto. We've often been told that you can test your blood, prick your finger, and get a 0.5 millimolar reading of blood ketones level in your bloodstream. And that's the official qualification for nutritional ketosis. And we hear the podcast about people bragging about their 3.7 and all this. And now it's kind of like, wait, are those high numbers not good maybe, because that means it's just floating around in your bloodstream, not being used? And boy, this was a really confusing issue for Mark and I doing research for the book. And we were testing ourselves, obsessively for months and months trying to figure this crap out. And I think I put it up on Instagram a couple months ago, but this was after an evening popcorn binge and a period of time where I was, loose with my carbohydrate intake. And I tested my ketones one day and they were 0.7, which was a higher number than I got almost for the entire duration of my very strict 5-month keto experiment for the book research where I was pulling 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.3. It's like, what's a guy got to do to put up some numbers here? I mean, some of these were coming off of like a 36-hour, or a 20-hour fast, and the previous 24 hours prior to that was extremely low carbohydrate intake with a sprint workout. And I'm like, all right, watch out. Here comes it. Watch out, Mr. Blood Number. It's going to blow the record off the machine, and it'll go beep 0.4. What? But now there's a little more understanding. Maybe the understanding is don't worry about it. I don't know. Are you testing a lot these days?
No. I mean, the last time I tested, I never really tested on my own. But when I was visiting in Sacramento, I think Lindsay had the meter. So I tested that, and I, because I was sort of on my travel keto diet where I'm, pounding the MCTs and the ketogenics. I think I blew like a 3 point something. So it was super high, but I'm sure, during my day to day, I never test, but because I'm not worried about it, I feel good, but I'm sure it's much lower. And I mean, just going by what people are saying anecdotally, I'd imagine that a high activity level, probably just means those ketones are going to be taken out of the blood and, used for something useful as opposed to just floating around in there. But yeah.
I remember Dr. D'Agostino said that your highest reading might come a couple hours after a hard workout while you're fasted. And that's because your liver is thinking that you need the resources because of the strenuous workout, but then you sit on the couch. So he says, do a hard workout, sit on the couch for 2 hours, and then take your blood. And so your liver doesn't know that the workout ended, so it's pumping ketones in. But if you were to take the reading 5 minutes after the workout, maybe it's down very low because you're burning through it.
And yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then something else that, I think Michael Rutherford, one of the moderators in the keto group, he was talking about how he saw his highest readings ever when he was backpacking, like doing, this low level activity for, or actually probably very strenuous activity, but he was eating some carbs. He was eating RX bars. And I would imagine that, having just that right amount of carbs it would make sense that it would sort of in the same way that ketones spare glucose, the carbs, the glucose would spare ketones because probably be prioritized that you have a more sort of the ketones floating around in there, more as like I don't know, they're just there, more available if you need them.
Right. Wild. Yeah. Well, we know that the ultimate level of adaptation is to get your muscles really good at burning fatty acids and your brain getting good at burning ketones. But when you start out on keto, this is from Finney and Volek's work, there you have sort of a competition for energy because the muscles are starved of their usual supply of glucose, the brain starved of its usual supply of glucose. So you're making ketones, and some of them are going to the muscles, some of them are going to the brain. So your workouts are slightly off, and you have the afternoon blues. That's why it's so important out of the gate to kind of tone down your exercise.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I definitely kind of learned on my journey.
At the very start or over time, what happened?
At the very start, I was still pretty big into the CrossFit scene. That was my jam. That was my community. That's where I was hanging out. So I was still pretty heavy into that, and I was decided, I wanted to lower my body fat a little bit, but I was still doing, daily CrossFit and, pretty long sessions where I'd do my own program, strength training, and then I'd hop in with the class and do, the WODs. And I couldn't figure out why, everyone talks about, the appetite suppressing effects of keto. And I was like, a few hours after my CrossFit class, I was like, what appetite suppressing effects? I was voracious. And it's not that I couldn't, people will say, well, I do keto and CrossFit and I feel fine. And I honestly never felt my workouts suffered either, but it was sort of, that dysregulation of appetite and, maybe that sort of afternoon blues that I wasn't really connecting with the workout itself. Cause I was getting through the workouts fine, but then in the coming days, you don't make that connection that maybe you're dragging a little bit. And, Yeah.
Oh, geez. I mean, this is a big deal for me because unlike you, I'm an old fool trying to do this crazy shit. Not as crazy as CrossFit. I feel like half a CrossFit workout is one of the best workouts on the planet. Shout out to everybody in CrossFit. Love you guys. Super fun. I've had some great times in there. I've had some minor injuries too because I got tired doing the inverted handstand pull-ups and squashed my neck because I was trying to do one too many reps. But anyway, it gets easily drifts into that chronic pattern, which is what you describe, where your voracious appetite was maybe not related to that one workout that you did that morning.
You know, every day after
17,
day, yeah. You keep sending, you know, that message of, you know, you're doing something very glycolytic, but there's nothing there, and so your brain is trying to, you know, send you the signals like, hey, like feed me. But yeah, I found a lot of success, you know, just changing. You know, I'd still go to the gym every day, but I just sort of changed the modalities because, you know, CrossFit's great because it introduces a lot of people to the world of strength training. You know, that's their first time touching a barbell, but there's many ways to sort of lift weights. And yeah, I fell more in love with, you know, just doing just old bodybuilding stuff and powerlifting and, you know, just doing those things. And that wasn't as taxing as, you know, getting my heart rate way up. And then for cardio, I just did sort of the MAF cardio, and that would just help me recover. So it was almost like this endless sink of that sort of activity I could do, you know, when I wanted to exercise, where I didn't feel like it was having the same sort of feedback loops. You know, I could just, you know, do the long, slow runs, and it would really relax me more than anything.
Wow. So, I mean, to be fair, you were overdoing it on CrossFit. I was
overdoing the intensity.
Yeah.
Too much.
So, but that does bring up a very important point, which is the workout itself is prolonged. Your heart rate is elevated for a long time. It's a blend of cardio and strength because that's their motto, is to forge elite fitness and be a gymnast, a power lifter and strength trainer, or something. The three pillars where they're trying to build everything up. So they're reaching that objective. But if you do that too often, you're kind of in that overstimulating stress hormones for too long a period of time. And in contrast, the jogging, the MAF heart rate, of course, you're not getting a stressful event. You're building your cardio the right way. You're burning fat. And then pairing that with these strength sessions, those are different because the work efforts are so short. Or what are those like? Strength training, when it comes down to it, is pretty boring. You know, you go in there, you're not really going in there to get your heart rate up. You do your sets and reps, you rest in between, and, you know, you're trying to progress over time, you know, lifting heavier and heavier weights. But, you know, you really don't burn through that much glucose in a session. And then, you know, you're resting, you know, in between your sets, and it's, right. Everybody messes that up, and they think it's like, oh, well, I strength train, so I need to drink Gatorade right after.
No, I mean, when I go to the gym, it's like, it's, you know, I'm listening to podcasts. It's like, I'm not getting amped up. It's like, you know, the best metaphor I've heard, it's like strength training is, it's just like moving a pile of dirt. And you know, it's just like, oh, you go in there and I move a little bit of, you know, dirt, you know, like digging a ditch. You know, some days you'll move a lot of dirt, and then, you know, some days it's just, you know, you barely move anything. But it's just like that consistency, and it's, I don't know, it's just not, it doesn't have to be this intense thing that you get really amped up for, and you're gonna, you know, get your heart rate jacked up for.
I guess that's better because you can feel it out and decide how much dirt you should move in a very appropriate manner, rather than submitting to, I mean, spinning class was the worst example, because I worked for the company and my job was to educate the instructors to the idea that you don't have to grind these guys to the sprint finish to the Tour de France every day. Sometimes it can be a spin session that's fun, and you learn how to pedal with one leg or whatever.
I mean, I'm still sort of trying to figure that out, because a lot of, you know, I'll follow like these programs, and they'll say, oh, you're supposed to do this and this on this day. And I'm just realizing more and more that some days, you know, that's just not the day to do it. And then other days when you're feeling good and you could probably knock it out of the park, it's like, it's just not there. And so I've just been, I mean, it's been something I've been thinking about more recently, is almost like probably need to take these pre-written programs and be more of my own sort of intuitive person. Think about it more as like this modular like blocks where it's like, oh, I have 2 or 3, hard, heavy, or like say I have 2 heavy squat days a week, and I can put those any days I want that week, and 2 heavy upper body sessions, and you just place, you do the workouts when you feel like you're ready to do them, and then
this sounds so breezy, but it's absolutely the highest level of sophistication of athletic training. You just kicked ass on the U.S. Olympic Training Center and all the bullshit spewing out of there with these physiologists and experts who are trying to coach an athlete like a robot. And if you just had this kind of, a bowl of
a thing of work you have to get done, like in a week, he's like, you have, you just have almost a laundry list of things you need to get done, and you decide where you want to put them based on, how you feel each day.
Yeah, Mark and I, when he was coaching me and I was on the professional triathlon circuit, and there was a big race coming 4 months from now, whatever, the idea would be like, yeah, you should get a few long rides in, and they should be really super high quality where you feel awesome. So guess what? That whole sentence, don't cut me off at the comma. You should get a few long rides in that feel super awesome and you perform great and you feel great. So if you go out there and you're just moving dirt or doing things in a mediocre way, it doesn't count, because I felt like crap. I bonked at mile 80, my quads, my lower back tightened up. Those are the days where I'm going to pack it in and go home after an hour, because I know after an hour that this ain't my day, and then bide my time. And then when the day comes, you knock it out of the park, as you say. And then you've done the appropriate work for whatever your race goal is. But we completely forget these simple notions in favor of consistency, which in this context is kind of bullshit.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it just comes down to just the way, I guess, programs and coaching is sort of delivered. It's always delivered on this sort of 7-day week, template. I don't know why, that it just sort of became a thing, that a training week is 7 days, and you put all the different workouts, on the same days of the week. And it's like, that makes a lot of sense from a convenience, factor. And whether you're, following like a pre-written program where you have, an online coach who's programming for a whole bunch of people, that's what they're going to do because it's easy. But, there's really no reason that a training week needs to be a set number of days. And, you can't, take rest days or not. I hate rest days, but I guess light days, I'm a big fan of, those not mediocre, but, where you're just going in.
A purposeful light day.
Yeah. And then you can choose where you want to put those.
So you hate rest, you hate not going to the gym or not doing something.
Yes, that's just my
frame a nice day.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, especially, I'm a new dad. And so sort of my gym time is sort of the couple hours I get to myself. So it's like this thing, I like waking up early before anyone can bother me. And
no shit, man. Because when we fly to Austin, we're 2 hours forward. It's 5:28 in the morning and you're gone walking 3 miles to the gym to do your power workout. It's very impressive.
Yeah. But I mean, that is like the time I have to myself, and I really like that time. And, so even if I'm, feeling a little bit creaky, I like to go in there and do something. And I do feel like those, I always like, I'll do these like programmed, deloads, and I always feel like worse, coming back.
What's a deload?
It's basically where you're supposed to like take, you do a super easy week, you'll do like 3 or 4 like hard weeks that sort of build and accumulate. And then you'll take basically almost a rest week where it's like super easy, and it's like a full week usually because, it's still on that sort of 7-day paradigm. And when I do that, I just like by the, Monday when I'm supposed to hit it again, I just feel like I forgot how to do anything, and it's, for me, it's like, why don't I just take, like if I was just, I think I'm moving towards this. If I was programming for myself, I'd do maybe, 3 or 4 easy days. And then by then, I'm ready to go. I don't need a full week of like nothing. And yeah, it's like I said, I like being active every day. So, I got to give I need to burn some energy every day. Like I just feel better.
Jeez, man. Now I'm rethinking some of these long held notions my whole life. What I considered recovery was mostly to be sitting around. And after a recent conversation with Joel Jameson on Get Over Yourself podcast, he's talking about this rebound training concept where you go in the gym and you are doing a purposeful workout to stimulate parasympathetic activity. That's the calming, relaxing, rest and digest nervous system. So through the workout, because it's carefully designed, you are going to speed up recovery and enhance recovery versus sitting home and eating and watching TV. And we know the body likes to move. And if you sit for more than 20 minutes, you stop burning fat and you start to get more insulin resistant really quickly. So we should be getting up and walking around all the time, especially after a sprint workout. I feel like movement the next day and movement for the duration of that day is going to dramatically minimize the damage and the trauma from the workout, because the body likes to move, not sit. And so this, you go and do a rebound workout, you're doing things like lifting the lift of the deadlift and then dropping the weight because we don't want to get sore, doing an interval that lasts 10 seconds. And then for the next 60 seconds, being really carefully attuned to trying to lower your heart rate and develop that skill where you can counter that stress response with the calming, relaxing response. So I guess the general message here is that you enjoyed going to the gym for mental health reasons as well as physical exercise. You don't have to slam yourself every day, but you're there doing something to make your day better, really.
Yeah, I'd say that sums it up.
What about the diet journey? So you got into Primal, I think, quite a while ago.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's in that age group, that's kind of rare. We seem to see the clientele or the followers are more in the age you are now, with young families and trying to be healthy and see what the best thing to their kids. But when did you first become exposed to this sort of ancestral approach, and how did the journey go from there?
Yeah, I think I'd had a brief exposure because I was doing CrossFit for like a little bit in college. And so I had a brief exposure to the whole paleo diet then. So I sort of had it at least rattling around in the back of my brain. And then, after I graduated, I did some travel, and then...
Because it made money on his viral video, I love my ducks. Go look it up.
And then when I got back from Africa, when I entered the work world, I moved down to LA, and I was down there. My brother was down there at the time, and I was just... I was living with him. I didn't have like a real job yet. And so I started working at this like trendy, like juice and smoothie bar, in LA.
And didn't LeBron James come in?
Yeah, it was in Century City. It was called Earth Bar. I think they still have locations. But it was the Century City Earth Bar. And I sort of got exposed to this whole like health and fitness like world that I'd never known about. And I realized looking back now that sort of season made a big impact. We were drinking smoothies full of, maca powder and bee pollen, and just the idea that, you can, sort of reach this next level, like through these nutrients we're taking in. And we were like, I was living with like a personal trainer and this other guy who was super into fitness. So we were just riding our bikes for miles all over LA, and then going to the gym, and then riding our bikes to the beach, and, just being super active. So that season sort of stuck with me as sort of this, I like being fit and healthy. And then that also got put on the back burner, and I started working my real job in advertising, which was, the whole soul sucking, introduction to the work world, which I know you sort of experienced, thankfully, like, way shorter than most of us. I think you were out of there in a week.
11 and a half weeks at the world's largest accounting firm out of college, and then deciding to retire to pursue a career as a professional triathlete. So I'm glad to hear someone else had that soul-sucking experience, because really, like, you're looking around your office and probably seeing these dudes that are so jacked about their, their contribution to the advertising world. And then that's when you really feel that disconnection. Like, the guys around me were so enthusiastic about auditing And I was only thinking about, what are the best wheels on my bike for my weekend ride? And that's a huge disconnect. So if you young listeners are involved in a career track that's not, it's not appropriate, take some action, man.
Yeah, I remember I knew within a couple of days that I was in the wrong place. But I think I was there for
17 years. Oh, sorry.
No, like 2.5 years. But I took some trips back to Africa sort of to regain my sanity. And during this phase, when I was working and going back and forth, that's when I started.
Where are you headed, Brian? You taking some days off? Yeah, I'm going to freaking Africa to get out of here. You consumerism bullshit, United States. Yeah, have a great time.
They took me back twice, and then the third time they're like, "You're not coming back this time." But during this time, I still sort of had that interest in, fitness and health, and living in LA. I got it in my head that, a vegan diet would be good to do. And at the same time, I was getting really into running just to sort of burn off steam at the end of the day. So this combination of not eating any animals and, just running like a madman after work, I shriveled away. And looking back, I probably really damaged my health, honestly. A lot of it was probably just working a job I didn't like. And then, putting on top of that, just not eating enough, not eating any animals. And then, just, running constantly,
you're talking about the triple crown there, man. A shitty job, a nutrient deficient diet, not to criticize veganism, but you probably didn't have the optimal approach, or it's not optimally in your genetics. And those are completely independent of a blanket condemnation. I think we're doing too much of that, where it's like, it was so stupid, I went vegan for a while. Well, some people are feeling fantastic on that mode, but maybe they have better jobs. I don't know.
Yeah, and honestly, I think probably the biggest thing was just not having a good job, or or even like a bunch of really close friends, like living in LA. But so I'm not gonna just trash the vegan diet either, but it definitely didn't do.
Plus, you weren't eating. It didn't. You're excluding some of the most nutrient dense foods on the planet.
Well, that and the chronic endurance exercise didn't do a lot of favors to my body composition as already a very small guy.
Yeah, could vegan be super awesome for the yoga instructor who is never doing anything chronic and never asking for explosive performance nor prolonged endurance suffering, and has that built-in chill type of disposition? That's an interesting question. It's probably, almost any diet could work if someone's really highly vibrating on all the other levels in their life. It's an interesting thought. And I know there's these counter arguments to whatever diet, where there's this tribe in South America that eats only cornmeal and a few other fruits and vegetables. Their diet is 100% carbs, and they're very healthy and they have no heart disease. Yeah, and they live at 8,000 feet and they walk 12 miles a day. So what you got to say about anybody walking 12 miles a day and not eating processed foods? You're done. You ascend to the next level. You're going to heaven. You're going to live to 97 probably. But for the rest of us who are in these stressful activities, like Dr. Tommy Wood says, all modern athletic goals are a completely modern construct. Hunter-gatherer did nothing of the sort. And we have to remember also, like, our ancestors they were lazy mofos that did the absolute bare minimum necessary to survive and never a finger lifting more, because there was no point. They weren't accumulating goods and trying to get to earn more beads to get a bigger hut, because they're going to break that thing down and move to the next place. So, now we're on a completely different zone and we have different dietary needs, perhaps.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think we've talked about it before. I mean, just off recording, but, diet, this is a whole podcast about diet, but it's, I think a lot of times we overemphasize, the role it plays. And as long as you don't want to screw it up, and we talk about, avoiding, sugars, grains, and those processed oils. Like, once you get rid of that, it's like maybe diet, everything else doesn't even matter that much compared to all the other lifestyle stuff.
I'm getting there, man. I mean, I don't think I was ever, hopefully not super dogmatic about, my journey and all the different stops, but I know that hanging out with Rip Esselstyn gives me a wonderful perspective. If you don't know him, he's an old-time triathlon buddy of mine. I've known him for 30 years. He's super positive, enthusiastic. He's making a fantastic change in the world. And he's from the entire opposite spectrum of us in the ancestral community. He's part of, his brand is called the Engine 2 Diet, best-selling book series. His father, Dr. Caldwell from Cleveland Clinic, is one of the world's leading researchers in reversing heart disease through diet. And they're in the plant-based category where they, swear off animal products. They don't even like oils like olive oil because it's too fat. And they want to emphasize Rip calls it the peasant foods of fruits, vegetables, whole grains. But if you spend a little time on a spreadsheet or whatever you want, breaking down the various messaging and the various approaches we have. And me and that mofo went shopping together at the Sacramento Natural Foods Co-op with our little baskets, sharing one basket, and almost everything in there was group activity. And then he likes to have a little more fruit than I do when I'm in my keto phases, and he doesn't want a bite of my liver. But oh my gosh, I think it's for all the listeners to back up a few steps and realize, who said this? Tommy said this on his blog. Dr. Tommy Wood said, moving around more is way more important than anything you eat. If you're not moving around enough, we have to start there. Same with sleep. Anyone would chime in there. So now that we got that off our chest, you had this shit ass vegan diet. You were training too hard, and you had a lousy job. So picking up from there.
And that combination of things sort of withered me away into a shell of a young mid-20-year-old person. And I think it was during one of these trips to Africa. I think maybe the one where I met my future wife. And I sort of, at that moment, sort of took a look in the mirror and be like, wow, I've sort of frittered away my health. And at the same time, I got a parasite when I was over in Africa. So that further,
I'd say you were vulnerable when you went over there then. I didn't know that storyline before, that you set yourself up by heading over there as a depleted, skinny chicken boy, as Grace called you. Yeah.
And then I further exasperated by, swimming in some dirty ass water in some African village and got a parasite that I didn't even know I had for several months, but, I continued to, lose weight. And, when it sort of became a health scare because they couldn't find what parasite it was. And so it became unclear if I did have a parasite or, if I had something more serious like cancer or something. So they started doing, I had to do a whole run up, like a bone marrow biopsy and all these things to make sure I didn't have cancer. But sort of that phase, I sort of took, I sort of just looked in the mirror and sort of asked myself questions of, why I'd been doing things that way. And I remember I just sort of wanted to turn a corner and like really build back my health and like virility. Really, I was like, I need to get some like, I just want to have robust health again. And that's sort of when I really sort of dove back into the whole primal paleo thing. And it definitely did make a difference. I was eating lots of eggs and sardines and meat. And that's when I moved to Portland and I became very involved in the CrossFit gym. And it really was this transformation. And I remember the next time I saw my future wife, Grace, like she didn't think it was the same person. Like, I used to be a stick and then, I wasn't a stick anymore, I guess.
It was only then that she agreed to date you and
seriously, probably.
Yeah. She's like, okay, I'll consider this white boy from America now because he looks
her whole family thought like the first time they saw me, they thought I was on drugs.
Oh, like tweaked out?
Yeah, they thought I was like a tweaker. They thought I was a tweaker. And then I came back, and they're like, oh, like this guy really shaped up.
Okay, so not to cast aspersions or judgments, but you plunged into that scene in LA and you drifted from one thing to the other and you ended up an overtrained, nutrient depleted, overworked, unfulfilled thing. And it's like, you're in your 20s, you're going for it. You're a talented artist and filmmaker. We saw that in college when you made the viral video, I Love My Ducks. And so it seemed like and you had this sincere interest in health and fitness. You're not talking about your partying days where you crashed cars and, hung out with Tommy Lee and got arrested. You were doing what you were, by all accounts, doing the best you could, and it's ran you aground. That's a pretty profound lesson to learn and reflect upon.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess
except for the swimming in the stinky pool, that was probably not a good idea. But wasn't it because you were hotter than heck and like at the equator just dying? Oh my gosh, yeah.
There was nothing. I was roasting, and nothing. I saw my African friend. He was doing it, so I thought, I could. It's fine for me too.
It's like me going to Mexico, man. I've just come back from my 4th trip there in 2 years and sick upon return every time. So I'm making a conclusion that maybe I shouldn't hang out in small villages in Mexico, even though other people are just fine. Connecting the dots. So you came back, and thanks to Portland. Okay, sorry, LA, you lose this battle to Portland, but this has to be the most health conscious town. I'll put Boulder up there. But it is phenomenal what's going on in this town, and stopping off at these random neighborhood markets like the New Seasons chain, which is only local, I think. They're absolutely phenomenal. They are, above and beyond Whole Foods in many ways. And this is what people are accustomed to because it's all over town.
Yeah. I mean, there's a big, sort of farm to table restaurant scene, and the whole plant-based vegan scene's big up here too.
Oh yeah, I forgot the Portlandia episode where they're eating the pasture-raised chicken. They're like, excuse me, is this chicken local? Is it pasture-raised? Well, did he have a good life? Did he have peer support? Oh God, that was funny. And then they're still trying to order, and then they can't decide, and so they have to get in their car and drive over to the home where the chicken was raised, so they could see about his health standards and his quality of life before they place their order in the cafe. That's Portland.
Portlandia is basically all true.
Basically. Based on true stories, it says at the start of the show.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had that nice supportive environment up here, especially the CrossFit community.
Yeah, and then I guess where to go from here.
So you went into the paleo style diet where you're slamming the sardines, the eggs, the meat, whatever, and then pairing that with back into a CrossFit scene. But were you getting into that chronic pattern with CrossFit?
Yeah, like anything. Things eventually, I think, got a little bit out of balance, like anything. It's not the thing itself. Like CrossFit's great, but if you overdo it, it becomes not so great. And I think I overdid it a little bit. And same with the diet. I think I got a little bit, I talked about this on the last podcast I was on, but a little bit myopic about, getting bigger and chasing strength, and then basically getting fatter than I wanted to, just sort of losing the forest for the trees, not really realizing it was happening. But it just comes down to, I don't know, balance. And
well, I guess if your powerlifting goal is to up your deadlift,
you want to get big.
You were doing fine. You were right on track. I mean, tell me, what was your high school weight? What was your weight when you were skinny chicken boy at your worst with the parasite? And then what did you bulk up to at your max?
I was always really small in high school. I was like probably 120 some pounds.
Like Steve Prefontaine from the same town, Coos Bay, Oregon.
And then college, just being a normal guy, was probably 130 some.
Well, not normal, because you guys were all celebrities. the Sup With Your Girl. You got to go on YouTube and look for, is Sup With Your Girl a channel? I think so.
If you search, the videos will come up. Sup With You Girl.
SUP.
WITCHUGIRL.
Yeah. So we're going to do a whole show about this for Get Over Yourself podcast. But you guys got this viral video for Duck football fans. and it led to this incredible dispute with the university, then settling and you guys collecting royalties and traveling around and blowing all your money. It's a beautiful story. So we want to hear that. We'll record that for posterity. But right now, so then you're college weight, and then
when I sort of went, when I was doing the vegan thing, I think I got with the parasite, I got below 120.
Oh God.
Oh, and at the same time, I think I always had sort of a ancestral interest, because I did this primitive survival school. I did a couple like courses out there, and so I did this 3-week during the same period of time where I was, vegetarian and parasitic. I did this 3-week survival course where they basically strip you of everything except, like a cloth sack and, a sweater and a knife, and like, you're out there and you have to make fire with sticks.
Where was it?
It was in like southern Utah.
Oh, geez.
It's really awesome. It's still going. It's called Boulder Outdoor Survival School. But yeah, talking about like learning about ancestral living, like that was, one of the biggest eye openers for me. And that was actually the turning point where I started eating meat, because part of the thing was you have to like process a sheep. Like about halfway through it, like the first week, you basically have nothing. And it wasn't planned, but there was a flash flood and we got trapped and we didn't eat for 6 days. So we didn't eat anything for 6 days.
Were you together with the group?
Yeah, it was a group. It was probably like 8 of us.
6 days.
Yeah. And then the next thing.
Did you have water?
We had water. And it wasn't supposed to be 6 days, but we basically got like trapped in our camp because of like the river came up. And so we were stuck there. And that was sort of my first only, experience with a prolonged fast. And I remember, just walking around like sort of in a haze, probably very ketotic, but not feeling good. But yeah, about halfway through, you kill and process a sheep, using like obsidian blades. And this was sort of the, this was my first meat, in like over a year. And that's still an experience, I sort of hold on to, I guess having to like hold down an animal and, watch it die, and just realize that anytime you do eat an animal, it's like, I know I do this, you can sort of see the free range label and you're like, okay, I'm good. I'm like I'm an ethical omnivore, but there's a cost, anytime you eat an animal, like, there's a little bit of suffering that happens no matter how well it's done. And it's easy to forget, but that sticks with me. But I felt like, okay, once I witnessed this, I'd like earned sort of, I've earned, it sounds stupid, but I've earned my ability to eat meat again.
Yeah, at least you're connected.
Yeah, I
think just to mess with vegans a little bit, when they're eating their wheat, inside that wheat molecule is a little bit of mouse that got caught in the rototiller blade. So it's all about drawing a certain line.
And that was, I think that's one of the main reasons I stopped eating meat, is because you get into this. It's just sort of that you feel like, the guilt of existing, everything you do like seems to take, the life of something else. And, it's hard to deal with. So you want to feel like you're doing something, and sort of the motto I came up with in the last few years is, all life feeds on life. So make sure your life is worthy of taking it, so you're sort of more focused, because no matter what you do, the inputs, you can't really minimize the input side of the equation. Like your life is going to feed on something. So focus on, I guess, the output side. So, make sure your life provides more value to the world than, those cows that you're eating would have.
Like it. Yeah.
But yeah.
So then you're kind of in this groove of ancestral style eating.
Mm-hmm.
And that's getting us up to, recent times, with that transition into the keto experiment.
Yeah, and then also, again, sort of on the theme of how, like, the lifestyle factors can I think we overplay the diet and not enough of the lifestyle. Like, at the same time, I sort of was able to really commit to the keto was when my wife got here. Having someone with me, I think just made my life more stable in general. And, I had that, I think I was just happier. So it made, following a diet a lot easier,
Wow. Right.
So looking back.
That's a pure motivation.
Yeah.
You're enjoying your life. You have someone to share with, because it was a struggle, listeners. He had to wait a year and deal with bureaucratic red tape where you guys are getting married, but they still wouldn't let her come here from her Sierra Leone is her home country.
Yes.
So that's tough, man. And like, speaking of that, that insight to make sure your life's worth it when you're taking another life from the cow or the sheep. Same with the relationship. Like, people are out there waiting a year for their love to come join them. And we're here turning our head and bickering just routinely, just for fun every day. So that's a cool story. And if you're motivated by positive energy and enjoyment of life, that's always going to be way more powerful than someone who's disgusted with their love handles and needs to get them off before their bridesmaid in the wedding later this summer. And those types of approaches, I think, are destined for failure and repeated failure, because if you're so disgusted that you failed, then why try again? And it just leads you down a dark hole. So now, what does the future look like? You're in this keto groove? Are you going to be like the next Peter Attia, who was like super hardcore every single day for 3 years? And now I ask him and he's like, nah, I'm too busy. I don't want to, I can't be bothered, which is such an interesting insight, where he was just, plunging deep into this thing and now kind of optimized in a different way to align with busy life and feeling like, maybe it is more trouble. But that's what I like about your approach, man, is like the simplicity and the stuff you said on the last podcast about just, minimizing the decision fatigue by just having go-to meals. I mean,
I've taken breaks. I've thought about that. I was like, especially when keto's gotten, I guess I started doing it when it was popular as well, but like around January, just like the hype around it, especially around New Year's, I got so sick of it. I was like, it made me not want to be keto. So I was like, I'm going to try something else. And honestly, it's almost like having all the options. It's almost like too many options for me. And that sounds stupid because I'm still in that whole primal world, but I find I've been keto for so long. It's like, I know exactly, I don't think about it anymore. So when I open it up, it's like, I constantly think about, what should I eat? Like,
yeah, we're on. If you're losing energy and listening to the podcast, perk up a little bit, because we're on to something really important here. And I'm going to weigh in saying, like, I have a very easy time making commitments to things and devoting myself. I'm a competitive, athletic-minded person. But if you like give me an inch and I say to myself, yeah, I'm going to enjoy some popcorn because I'm out of my strict keto experiment and now I'm going to see how my body responds to this and that. I will inhale that shit. And it's kind of funny to observe that I guess I was deprived, even though I didn't have any trouble and I wasn't obsessing about popcorn for 30 nights in a row. When it comes and I make the decision that this is okay, and I introduce all these variables that you're talking about, it starts to get a little bit weird.
And it's not that, it's not even that you're probably overdoing it, but I find myself less happy, like less satisfied with the choice, the more choices I have.
Well, that's psychologically verified by science.
Yeah, I've definitely found that to be true. And it's like, I just think of like, when you go to In-N-Out, the menu's like so simple and there's something like very satisfying about it, as opposed to, you go to Cheesecake Factory and you're paging through the menu, you're like, God, what should I order? And it's like, no matter what you order, you're always like, maybe I should have gotten that.
How's yours over there?
Yeah.
Do you want a bite? Here you go. Here's a half a forkful.
Yes. Yeah. So I don't know. I just find my sort of satisfaction with my way of eating higher when I'm just sort of in this sort of stubborn keto mindset. And there's not that many foods that I really, miss or that don't fit within it. So it's like, I guess why I'm so used to it now, why would I change?
Yeah, it's like chocolate. Okay. my whole life, I indulged now and then, starting as a kid, with my favorite chocolate bars like Mounds or Almond Joy or Nestle's Crunch or whatever. And I think as an adult, I toned that down. But I remember years of, going to Trader Joe's and getting a nice, I like the Toblerone with the triangular shape. And that was my enjoyment of chocolate. And then into this, primal scene now, I'm a decade in, it was like, oh, you're supposed to eat dark chocolate, not milk chocolate. So I bought my first bar of dark chocolate and I was like, yeah, this tastes like cardboard. There's no sweetness. Chew. I'm done. But 10 years later, I'm a huge connoisseur of dark chocolate. I just presented you with the fabulous Thomas Keller bar that's second to none. And I'm, searching around the world and learning more on the internet, and had the show with Terea Rodriguez where she got into the details of how to select a good dark chocolate. And it's like, if you give me a bite of milk chocolate, I will want to spit it out. And I'm telling you this from the bottom of my heart. It's like, I can't stand that stuff because I've dehabituated from it. Mm-hmm. And you're sort of dehabituated from massive choices every morning to glutton out and have, the 5-point all-star breakfast where you get the buffet at the Ritz-Carlton. That's we always rip on those guys in the book because it's like $40 for the healthy starter buffet, and it's got whole wheat toast with apple butter, freshly squeezed juice, oatmeal, this and that, and it adds up to like 176 grams of carbs or something to just blast you to the moon and then crash and burn. So I think it's something really important for the listeners to consider, is that narrowing down your choices, gaining more satisfaction, reducing decision fatigue.
I honestly think that's why a lot of people do find as much success as they do with the keto diet is, because honestly, you could, if you just, track your calories and, weigh and measure everything, you could lose weight eating pretty much any way. But it's like, that's just not realistic. And it's, the food environment we're in today is, it's very hazardous, for anybody to navigate. And then, just sort of the narrowing of foods that, the keto diet provides is sort of just this tool, that people can, have, and they know like, oh, I don't eat that. And it's working for people.
Yeah. And when it comes to the bad stuff, educating yourself, taking responsibility for your health, and understanding that refined high polyunsaturated vegetable oils have been shown to create an instant disturbance in healthy cellular function at the DNA level, such that they are compared unfavorably to smoking a cigarette. Dr. Kate Shanahan is big on this, where they've done research. I think they gave some healthy college subjects a dose of French fries, and they had disturbed arterial function. They had stiffer, less fluid arterial function for 24 hours. Whereas if you smoke a cigarette, you screw up your cardiovascular system for like 6 or 8 hours. And so just learning these insights and saying, okay, this stuff will kill me. We know that. Sugar will kill you now. Dr. Robert Lustig, Gary Taubes, the information is out. We don't want to ignore it and make rationalizations like, hey, everything in moderation, but just like knowing that and owning it, and then making a decision like, I don't want to die and suffer like so many people are doing, so I can't eat that. And so there's no, decision has come from the Latin word decise, and it means to cut away, like incision, decision, right? So you've cut away all the other options when you make a decision. And so, we can make a decision right now to say, I'm not eating these certain things that I know to be harmful to my health. And it makes it so much easier. You're not missing out anymore. There's no more missing out because you've gone onto a different path. Yeah,
and even going back to the satisfaction part, like there's a lot of creativity in sort of having like a more limited palette. When you just have like, oh, I can only paint with these 3 crayon colors. It's like, if you have the whole box, it's like you're like, which one do I use? But it's like, any person who does creative stuff, realizes that some sort of constraints is useful, and when you're putting meals together, you're like, oh, I just have these foods. How many combinations, can I use this group of foods and, mix and match and create different things with them?
So are you making fun of my YouTube videos where I have slow motion, reverse, different songs, using all the features on iMovie or Adobe Premiere Elements, like a real big shot. Check out this flick. Yeah. Back and forth, back and forth. Yeah, no, it's true. And I mean, we got to start waking up and looking after our health, doing it right, seeing that big picture, especially as emphasized with getting the exercise, sleep, and stress management right before we worry or stress too much about diet.
Yeah.
Brian McAndrew, killing it. What a great show. Now you got to go listen to yourself. Wait, we didn't make any mistakes. It's a clean recording. There's no dubbing or anything. We nailed it. Thanks for doing this. Thank you so much for listening. And go to ketoreset.com, learn more about the Mastery course, where more interviews of a rich educational nature to help guide you along and avoid the silly mistakes that we covered a little bit today. Thank you for listening to the show. We would love your feedback at getoveryourselfpodcast@gmail.com. And we would also love if you could leave a rating and a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. I know it's a hassle. You have to go to desktop iTunes, click on the tab that says ratings and reviews, and then click to rate the show anywhere from 5 to 5 stars. And it really helps spread the word so more people can find the show and get over themselves, because they need to. Thanks for doing it. This is Brad. I want to tell you about my life-changing acquisition of a personal home-use sauna. I have a 6x6 barrel sauna in my backyard, ready-made heat therapy, a fabulous unit from Almost Heaven. Check out their website. You can very affordably order your own sauna for installation in your backyard or garage and have a sauna experience, the fabulous health benefits accruing from exposure to hot temperatures. Get that sweat going. These are beautiful, traditional dry barrel saunas where you splash the water on the rocks, go in there and relax. It's become a social centerpiece at my home. People traveling from far and wide to come check out the barrel sauna, turn the dial or set the timer and walk in to 200 degrees in the Caribbean seas. For some reason, people like to come to the sauna more than my cold tub. Go figure. Check out almostheaven.com and their beautiful natural wood designs, and pretty soon, surprisingly affordable, you will be in the home sauna business.